Hey, what's up guys, it's Jonathan here. One of the biggest fears most real estate investors have is renting out their property to a bad tenant. And this completely makes sense. Just think about it. You've worked so long to save up enough money to buy and fix up a rental property, only to have some random person move in and completely destroy all of your hard work. But by taking the proper steps, you can significantly lower the chances of this happening to you. So in this video, we'll discuss 4 steps you must take when renting out a property. So as always, if this video provides you any value, consider hitting the like and subscribe button for the YouTube algorithm. It greatly helps the channel grow and helps push this video out to as many people as possible. So before we get any further in this video, I wanted to state that this video is only for entertainment purposes only, and some of the information in this video is applicable to my local laws, but they may not be for yours. So please make sure you talk to the proper professionals when you are considering to rent out a property. So all of that said, let's get right into it. So the first thing you must do is you must run a credit check for all prospective tenants. A credit score is a really good way of qualifying tenants. And the reason for this is that a credit score shows how well someone can pay bills on time. And if someone has a long history of paying their bills in a timely manner, there's a pretty high chance that they'll probably do the same when it comes to rent payments. You'd be surprised, but there's a lot of landlords out there that don't run credit on their prospective tenants. And for me, this is a huge no-no. When you lease a rental property out to someone, you're almost essentially turning over the rights of that property to someone else. So it's very important that you know everything you possibly can on that person before you rent out the property to them. Another huge mistake I've seen landlords do when it comes to credit is that they'll waive the credit requirement as long as the renter pays a chunk of the lease up front. And this is something else that you should avoid doing as well. And the main reason why you want to avoid this is that you have no leverage or recourse in the case the tenant decides to stop paying rent after that period of time that they prepaid up front is over, and or they start damaging your property. Another reason why you want to run your tenant's credit is kind of see how their overall financial health is. So if you see a tenant that has like $1 million worth of debt, but they only make $40,000 a year, that might signal a red flag that they may be in some financial distress. But you never know, so you have to be careful on this one. But it does give you a heads up just in case something comes of it in the future. Typically for me, I like to look for tenants that have at least a 700 credit score or better. But I do know some landlords that do rent to people with credit scores as low as 650 as well. And you may be thinking, with such a high minimum credit threshold, that's harder for me to find qualified tenants. And even though this is true, usually I combat that by bringing the rent price down a little bit. That slight reduction of rent price usually drives enough demand to get properties rented as quickly as possible. And at the same time, ensure that I get a well-qualified tenant. The second thing you should do when you're renting out a property is to also run a background check on the tenant as well. A background check allows you to learn more about the person that you're planning on renting to. And typically from a background check, you could obtain information like employment history, education, and criminal records, and much more. The background check can also act as a good tool for you to cross-reference anything they put in their application or anything that they told you about themselves. You could use this information in a multitude of ways to determine if a prospective tenant is a good fit for your property. But this could be also a good telltale sign to see how honest the tenant is, and allows you to see if they're going to be an easy person to work with down the road. So for example, let's say you have a tenant that comes to you and says that they work for employer X as an engineer or something like that. You run a background check and you realize that they work at a gas station. And if that information holds up, this may not be the most ideal person to rent to, as you may end up having difficulties with them in the future. And the funny thing about it is that most landlords run background checks even less than they run credit checks. Because there's a good amount of landlords that do run credit checks, but there's even less that run background checks as well. So it's very important that you consider doing both when renting out an apartment to someone. So the third thing you should do when renting out a property, and this is more applicable when you're buying a rental property, not necessarily when you're trying to rent one out, and that is that you should be buying rental properties in good neighborhoods. So this reason is going to get a little tricky, so hang in there with me. Typically when most real estate investors compare different investment properties, they usually compare them by how much cash flow they could get out of the property, instead of comparing them by what neighborhood the property is located in. And generally speaking, properties in less desirable neighborhoods tend to cash flow more than properties in more desirable neighborhoods. Even though cash flow is an important aspect of real estate investing, there's too many problems with this kind of thinking. First, anytime there's a downturn in the real estate market, properties in less desirable neighborhoods tend to get hit the hardest in terms of value drop. Since the residents of those neighborhoods are usually more impacted by economic turmoil compared to the people who live in more desirable neighborhoods. But second, and most importantly, buying in less desirable neighborhoods increases the chances you'll have a less desirable tenant. And by no means I'm saying that there aren't any good, well-qualified tenants in these kind of neighborhoods. It's just that your chances of running into a less qualified tenant are a lot higher in these situations. So you might be thinking to yourself, what's considered a good neighborhood? And the answer to that is 100% subjective. What I might think is a good neighborhood, you might not think so, and vice versa. What I like to do is ask myself this question: would I mind living in this neighborhood myself? If the answer is yes, then I'll look to buy rental properties in that area. But if the answer is no, then I'll move on and look for another area that I wouldn't mind to live in myself. So the fourth thing you must do when renting out your property is to get references from prospective tenants. When renting out a property, one of the best things you can do is request references. So you can ask for work and landlord references from the prospective tenant. Once you get the contact information from the tenant, what you want to do is you want to double check to make sure that these references are accurate. When it comes to work references, you can just get the name of the employer, Google it, and call them directly and ask them if the contact person that the tenant listed on their application, if they work there or not. And then to verify that landlord reference, usually for most properties, you can find the owner's information online. Once you do find their information, you can give them a call, and then you can ask them questions about the tenant that's applying to live in your place. Another way you could double check these references is by comparing them to the background check that you got earlier on. If those two check out, there's a pretty good chance that the tenant is solid. So even though there's no 100% bulletproof way to ensure that you're getting the right tenant for your property, the 4 ways mentioned in this video are good ways to possibly avoid problematic tenants and in turn protect the investment that you've worked so long and hard for. So I'd like to thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please hit the like button for the YouTube algorithm. It greatly helps out the channel and helps push this video out to as many people as possible. If you enjoy my perspectives and the way I explain things, consider hitting the subscribe button and notification bell so you get notified every time I post a new video. Also, I'd love to hear from you guys. Have you guys ever had any problematic tenants before? Let me know in the comment section down below. I'd love to hear from you guys. Also, check me out on all my social medias. I try to post there every day. And thank you so much for watching. I'll see you in the next video.